Well, hey everyone, this is Pastor Eric with another video teaching, just a mini teaching that we're using to accompany some of the aspects of the gifts of the Spirit that we're not able to touch on through our series that we're going through right now. Last week I introduced the idea of APEST and gave you a quick summary of how I think it works. If you didn't catch that video and you're jumping in now, go back and listen to that one. It's a short video and it gives you kind of a summary of how we orient this amidst some of the other gifts and why I think these are distinct and how every person has one of these five: apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. But today I want to give you some understanding of definitions of what each of those gifts are. There's a lot of people that have lots of ideas and opinions. What I did is I tried to look around at a lot of the different voices in this discussion about the apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, and teachers, and try to create some sense of understanding with all of their perspectives in mind. And so what I want to do is start here with apostle. The idea of apostle, the word apostle literally means sent one. So it's like a missionary. They advance the gospel into new territories. That could be geographic or generationally, right? Into different cultures, geographically, ethnically, but also as we translate culturally from one generation to the next. They are parenting types of figures who establish churches by creating disciples, sons and daughters in the faith, then cultivate the community as they move on to new endeavors. And so what happens is they're very entrepreneurial. That's kind of the translation in the non-church world, is that they like to start things, plant things, disciple people up to be able to take over, and then they move on to something else that they believe God has for them. Then there's, from apostle, then there's prophet. The ones who hear and listen to God, those who forthtell and foretell. They are concerned with hearing from God and calling people into action on behalf of the message, often calling out sin or next steps in the people of God that the people of God should be taking. They're usually pioneer thinkers or trailblazers who envision a future for the church, which the church can often not quite see yet. They point the church towards it and try to get people to move in that direction. And so the prophet is always concerned with hearing from God, and they always have this vision of where we should go next. And in Ephesians, I can't remember exactly the verse, but there's a part where it talks about that the church begins, it starts on the establishment of the teaching of apostles and prophets. They tend to work together in tandem. The evangelist then is the ones who bring forth good news to the world, those who proclaim the gospel in word and deed as they engage the world. They contagiously recruit, I think that's important for this, they contagiously recruit people to believe in God and to join in the cause for the kingdom. They're really good at getting people on board. That could be, recruiting for a specific ministry or recruiting for people to come to know Jesus who maybe don't know Jesus. They're evangelists. I think we often think about the person who proclaims and teaches, like Billy Graham. He was probably preaching and teaching from an evangelistic standpoint, and I do believe he was an evangelist, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that. This could be on the street level, you having a coffee shop conversation with somebody as you recruit and tell them about the good news. Then we have shepherds. Now we've crossed a line. Those first three tend to be more of the trailblazers, pioneers. They start new things. I think the evangelist kind of swings both ways, actually. They can be useful for starting new things, but also building up. As we go into shepherd and teacher, it's what Mike Breen and 3DM will call the cultivating gifts. They're like gardeners. So once the thing is built, they tend to everyone on the other side. So the shepherd are the ones who shepherd people. They're pastors. Those who are especially burdened, and again, by that, I don't mean necessarily Sunday morning. They're people who are shepherding people. That is what a pastor is, not necessarily the role of pastor that we've created in our modern iteration of that. Those who are especially burdened with caring for God's people, they place a special focus on unity, protection of the sheep, and they point people towards the green pastures of nurturing relationships. We've had some really great examples in our own congregation, but it's just those people who love to love on people, who love people and want to care for them all the time. They don't always challenge, but they always care for people and make sure that they're growing. Then we have the teacher, the final one, the ones who seek and share truth. Those who teach the scriptures and seek deeply to understand the biblical truth and application for it in our lives. They are the champions of, quote, correct doctrine and are sensitive to protecting the church community from false doctrine. Now, I kind of laugh at that because often what can happen is they'll major on the minors and create specifics, but that's because it's a gifting that they have. They want things to be accurate. They want truth and understanding of doctrines to be accurate, but often they can catch one set of type of doctrines, maybe from a denomination or ones that they see as correct, and then they kind of hold those two tightly. But what we need is teachers who are constantly driving us, as the pioneers and the trailblazers are moving forward, that people are being cared for on the other side, that they're being taught and discipled the commands of Jesus. That's what the Great Commission tells us. Now, as we end this second part to this video, what I wanted to point out is I think there's a base and a phase way in which these can operate. When you see a need, you often arise to that occasion, right? And so sometimes I will act as a teaching mode even though I have a base kind of prophetic wiring inside of me. And so what we do is we tend to find this base level. This is what we usually are wired to operate out of, one of those things, I think. And then given a season or a need, we can operate differently and jump into one of those phases for a season. Mike Breen of 3DM says that each person operates in one of these 5 categories. And then there is a base wherein we typically operate, but given different circumstances, we have phases wherein we act accordingly to a different aspect of the APEST in order to accomplish a goal or help people in a season, right? So here's the bottom line. We are all called to maturity. We are all called to lean on each other in these gifts. We don't get to just say, hey, as a prophetic person, we only talk and hang out and think about prophetic ideas. That would make us immature according to Ephesians 4. So what we need to do is to learn that we need each other for checks and balances, but also to lean on, to depend on each other and ask God, I need someone really who's thoughtful about doctrines. I need a teacher to help me plan out this sermon series. Or, man, I just really need someone who's evangelistic to come and help me, because remember, they're not designated to do these things on our behalf. That would be immature as well. They are here to equip the believers, which is what it tells us in the scripture, so that all of us would be eventually able to do all of these things. That's the goal. That's what Christ looked like. He was the fullness of every single one of these. The perfect example of an apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, and teacher, all wrapped up in one. That's why we become mature as we look towards becoming like Jesus, as we look towards becoming more and more like these. Well, there's a lot more that I could say about it. Maybe we'll have that conversation in person at some point. Maybe we'll have a chance to teach on it. If you wanted more information, Pastor Sam and I did do a podcast on this, I think last season. If you want to search on iTunes or on Spotify, there's a Q&A format, and he asked me a lot of questions about these and kind of fields out some of these things. And one more time, I wanted to say, this is not necessarily gospel. This is my iteration. There's a good few ministries and a lot of voices speaking on this right now. I would encourage you to check it out as the fivefold gifting or the APEST paradigm. But it's just one way in which we can think about how we interact our spiritual gifts, at least these 5, with the other ones that we're working through right now.